My children put me in a nursing home. They said it was better for me. I'd have people my age, they said. I packed my bag without tears. 6 months later, I left on my own terms. 16 months later, they came back and found out that some things can't be undone. But let me start at the beginning. Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? The day they came to talk about my future, I was making coffee in my kitchen. The same kitchen where I'd raised them both after their father left. The same counter where Daniel had done his homework while I worked double shifts at the hospital. The same table where Lena had practiced her presentations before every college interview. They sat across from me with folders, actual folders, like I was a client. "Mum," Daniel started, using that voice he reserves for explaining things to people he thinks won't understand. "We've been talking. We think it's time," Lena added, her smile practiced and perfect. She'd worn that same smile in her engagement photos. "You've been alone too long. What if something happens? I'm 63, not 90. I spent 30 years as an emergency nurse. I know what something happening looks like, and it doesn't look like me forgetting to water plants or missing a doctor's appointment." But I didn't say that. I sipped my coffee and let them talk. They had researched facilities. They had brochures. Daniel slid one across the table. Glossy paper, happy elderly people playing cards under warm lighting. Brookside Manor, private rooms, activities, a community. "It's very well reviewed," Lena said. "And honestly, Mum, you deserve to relax. You've worked so hard your whole life." The translation was clear. "You're becoming inconvenient." I looked at my son. His jaw was tight. There was something else here, something under the surface. Daniel only got that look when he was hiding debt or bad decisions. "How much?" I asked. "The monthly fee is very reasonable," Lena said quickly. "We've already looked at your finances. Your pension and social security will cover most of it." "Most of it. My money for my imprisonment." "And we'll handle everything," Daniel added. "All the paperwork, the transition. You don't have to worry about anything." That's when I knew. They weren't asking. They'd already decided. I could have fought, could have argued, hired a lawyer, made a scene. But I'm a practical woman. I've learned that the best way to understand what someone's planning is to let them think they've won. So I nodded. "If you think it's best." The relief on their faces was almost insulting. 3 weeks later, I watched Daniel's truck pull away from my house with the last of my essential belongings. He'd sold my car 2 days earlier, said I wouldn't need it anymore. Lena had sorted through my closets, keeping what she thought was appropriate for facility life. They'd left behind 40 years of my life in that house. My nursing textbooks, my garden tools, the quilt I'd made when Daniel was born. I stood in the lobby of Brookside Manor with one suitcase and a purse, watching my children hug me goodbye. Lena's perfume was expensive. Daniel's watch was new. They both looked lighter, like they'd solved a problem. "We'll visit soon," Lena promised. They didn't. Brookside Manor was exactly like the brochure. Clean floors, soft music, staff members with kind voices and tired eyes. My room was on the second floor. One window, one bed, one chair. Everything a person could need, if that person needed very little. I unpacked in silence, hung my clothes in the small closet, set my toiletries in the bathroom, placed the single photo I'd brought, me and my mother at my nursing school graduation, on the nightstand. Then I sat in the chair and looked out the window. I didn't cry. Crying is what people do when they think there's no other option. I memorized the view instead. The parking lot, the delivery schedule, the shift changes. I watched the patterns. In an emergency room, you learn that patterns tell you everything. You learn that chaos has a structure if you're patient enough to see it. On my third day, I met Sophie Hudson. Sophie lived in the room next to mine. I noticed her first in the dining hall. A woman about my age, with grey hair cut short and practical, reading a paperback novel while she ate. No pretending to enjoy the conversation around her. No performing happiness for the staff. I liked her immediately. "That seat taken?" I asked. She looked up, evaluated me in one quick glance, and gestured to the chair. Only by ghosts of dignity past. I sat down. "Margaret Lowell. I go by Maggie." "Sophie Hudson. I go by someone who didn't ask to be here either." We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Sophie closed her book, a murder mystery, and said, "Your kids put you here too?" "How'd you know?" "You've got the same look I had 3 months ago, like you're doing math in your head." She was right. I was always doing math now. Days until the next pension deposit. Cost per day of this place. How long until my savings ran out? "My daughter and son," I said, "decided I was lonely." "Mine decided I was becoming a burden," Sophie replied. "I'm an accountant, was an accountant, worked for an oil company for 30 years, never missed a day. But I turned 65 and suddenly I'm too old to make my own decisions." "They take your money too?" Sophie's smile was sharp. "Not take exactly. They manage it, for my own good." We understood each other perfectly. Over the next few weeks, Sophie and I fell into a routine. Breakfast together, morning walks in the small garden behind the building, lunch in our rooms. We'd stopped pretending to enjoy the communal meals. Evenings in the common room, where we'd play cards and watch the other residents slowly disappear into themselves. Sophie told me about her cabin, a place she'd bought 15 years ago before her husband died. Small, mountain property, 2 hours from here. She still owned it. Her kids didn't know about it because she'd bought it in her maiden name, some financial planning strategy from her accountant days. "Sometimes I think about just leaving," she said one evening, "signing myself out and driving up there. They can't actually stop us, you know. We're not criminals. We're just inconvenient." I filed that information away like I'd file a patient chart. Potentially useful, potentially critical. The staff at Brookside were professional. The nurses, I could always tell which ones had actually been trained and which ones had taken a weekend course, followed their routines with practiced efficiency, medications at 8, vitals at noon, lights out by 10. But it was Cassandra Bates who interested me most. Cassandra worked in the administrative office. Mid-50s, sharp eyes, clothes that were professional but worn. She'd smile at residents, but it was the kind of smile that said she saw everything and judged accordingly. I learned she'd worked in corporate communications before taking this job. Overqualified and underpaid, like most women who've been pushed out of better positions for being too old or too expensive. I started bringing my questions to her. Small things at first. Where did I sign for mail? How did I request copies of my medical records? Could I see my account statements? She never questioned why I was asking, just provided the information, efficient and quiet. That's how I learned the truth. One afternoon, exactly 2 months into my stay at Brookside, I was in Cassandra's office asking about a billing statement I'd received. She pulled up my file on her computer, and I watched her face change. "Mrs. Lowell," she said carefully, "have you reviewed your payment arrangements?" "My children said it was all handled." She turned the monitor toward me. "The monthly fee is $3,200. It's being auto-withdrawn from your primary account, the one where your pension and Social Security deposit." I looked at the numbers. My pension was $3,800 a month. Social Security another $1,400. After the nursing home fee, I had $1,900 left, except I also had property taxes, insurance, medications. "Where's the rest going?" I asked. Cassandra clicked through screens. "There's a monthly transfer, $800 to an account under Daniel Lowell's name, marked as property management." Property management, for the house I still owned, my house, the one I'd paid off 5 years ago, the one I'd scraped and saved for through every overnight shift and every missed vacation. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Not rage. Rage is hot and stupid. This was calculation. "Can I get copies of these statements?" I asked. Cassandra looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "I can email them to you, if you have an email address." "I do." She printed them anyway, slid the papers into a folder and handed it to me. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "people forget that having someone manage your money doesn't mean it stops being yours." I thanked her and went back to my room. That evening, Sophie found me on the garden bench, the folder open on my lap. "Bad news?" she asked. "Confirmation," I said. I showed her the statements, explained the numbers, watched her face harden with recognition. "They're bleeding you," she said, "slowly and legally." We sat in the cooling air as the sun set behind the building. Somewhere inside, someone was watching television too loud. Somewhere else, someone was crying. "My kids are probably doing the same thing," Sophie said. "I just haven't looked yet." "You should." "Yeah." She was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" I closed the folder. "I'm going to watch and memorize, and when I know everything I need to know, I'm going to walk out of here." Sophie smiled. It was the first real smile I'd seen from her. "You'll need a place to go." "I might." "Cabin's got 2 bedrooms." And just like that, I had an ally. I became a student of my own life. Every morning, I'd request mail from the front desk. Most days, there was nothing, but occasionally, a bank statement would arrive, a notice from the county assessor, a bill for insurance I didn't remember authorizing. Cassandra would make copies before I signed the receipt, never asked why I needed them, just handed me the folder with a look that said she understood exactly what I was doing. Sophie and I spent our afternoons in the small library off the main common room. It had 3 computers for residents, slow machines with restricted internet access, but enough for what we needed. We'd look up property records, review account management laws, read about financial guardianship and power of attorney. "You never signed anything, right?" Sophie asked one day. "Just the intake forms for the facility. Nothing about finances. Then they forged your signature, or they've been doing this under some kind of implied consent." She clicked through another page. "Either way, it's legal until you contest it. And if you contest it from inside a nursing home, guess whose mental state gets questioned?" That was the trap, the perfect trap. Put me somewhere that implied I couldn't care for myself, then use that placement as evidence that I couldn't manage my own affairs. Smart. Ruthless. Exactly what I would have expected from Daniel. The bank letter arrived on a Tuesday. I was in the common room pretending to watch a cooking show when the mail cart came through. My name was called. I signed. Carried the envelope back to my room with the same careful calm I'd use when transporting samples to the lab. Inside, a single sheet. Official letterhead. Language designed to be impenetrable. But I'd spent 30 years reading medical reports. I knew how to pass bureaucratic language. The summary. My house had been used as collateral for a business loan, Daniel's construction company. $60,000. If the loan defaulted, the house would go into foreclosure. He'd mortgaged my home without telling me. I sat on my bed and read the letter 3 times, made sure I understood every word, every implication. Then I folded it carefully and added it to my growing file. Sophie came by that evening with 2 cups of coffee she'd smuggled from the staff break room. Real coffee, not the weak excuse they served at dinner. I showed her the letter. She read it in silence, set it down, picked up her coffee and drank half of it in one long swallow. "Your son is stealing your house," she said finally. "Yes." "And your daughter is stealing your pension." "Yes." "Are you going to report them?" I thought about that, thought about police reports and investigations and court dates. Thought about Daniel's lawyer, because he'd have one, arguing that Mum was confused, that she'd agreed to everything, that she was safely tucked away in a nursing facility because she couldn't manage on her own. Thought about Lena's perfect face on the witness stand, crying those practiced tears, talking about how hard it was to watch her mother decline. "No," I said, "I'm going to take it all back." Sophie's smile was grim. How? Carefully. Over the next 2 months, I built a framework. Cassandra helped me open a new bank account, a small local credit union, where I could transfer my remaining savings. Not much, maybe $12,000, but mine, in an account only I could access. I contacted the mortgage company, told them I wanted to review the collateral documentation. They sent copies. Daniel's signature was on everything, but the authorization line for the property owner was blank. Either he'd planned to forge it later, or he'd convinced them he had power of attorney. He didn't. I filed a formal dispute, stated clearly that I had not authorized use of my property as collateral, and requested immediate removal of the lien. Attached a copy of my driver's license, my nursing license, a letter from my doctor confirming I was of sound mind. Sophie helped me draft everything. Her accountant brain knew exactly what language to use, what forms to file, what paper trail to create. They're going to notice, she warned. I know. They'll come here, try to stop you. Let them try. But they didn't come. That was the thing about Daniel and Lena. They'd never actually cared enough to visit. Too busy, too important, too convinced that putting me here meant they didn't have to think about me anymore. Their mistake. Cassandra knocked on my door one evening in late March. She was off shift, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her work clothes. Can I come in? She asked. I opened the door wider. She sat in my single chair, looked around the small room, my neatly made bed, my few belongings, the stack of folders on my desk. I shouldn't be telling you this, she said, but I pulled your original intake file, the one from when you first arrived. And? Your son signed the financial management agreement, not you. He had a notarized letter claiming medical power of attorney, but when I looked up the date, it was from a week after you were admitted here. The notary is his sister-in-law's husband. Forgery, medical fraud, financial exploitation, all documented, all provable. Why are you helping me? I asked. Cassandra looked at her hands. I had a mother too. My brother put her in a state facility when I was out of the country for work. Took her pension, sold her furniture. By the time I got back, she was gone. She looked up. I couldn't help her, but I can help you. She handed me a flash drive. Copies of everything in your file, including the forged documents, if you ever need them. I took it. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Just promise me something. What? Make it hurt. After she left, I sat with the flash drive in my hand. Such a small thing, but it held everything. Every lie, every theft, every betrayal. I thought about my children, about the years I'd worked to give them everything, about the nights I'd missed their school plays because I was saving lives in the ER, about the sacrifices I'd made so they could have college funds and new clothes and opportunities, about how they'd repaid me by treating me like a problem to be solved. Sophie found me at breakfast the next morning. You look different, she said. I am different. Good different, I smiled. I know exactly what I'm going to do. 2 weeks later, I walked into Laurie Evans's office. Laurie ran Brookside Manor with efficient professionalism. She knew the name of every resident, every staff member, every delivery driver. Nothing happened in this building without her knowledge. Mrs. Lowell, she said, gesturing to a chair, what can I do for you? I want to formally discharge myself from this facility. She didn't look surprised. Are you certain? Do you have a place to go? I do. I'll be staying with a friend. Does your family know? They'll find out when they need to. Laurie studied me for a moment. Then she pulled out a form. You understand that once you leave, the contractual payment arrangement will be terminated? I understand. And you're leaving voluntarily? No coercion? Absolutely voluntarily. She slid the form across. I signed it. Margaret Lowell. Neat, clear, competent signature. When? She asked. Tomorrow morning. That night, Sophie and I packed. We didn't have much. A few clothes, some books, the folders of documents, The flash drive. We sat on my bed, two women in our 60s, preparing to walk out of our prisons. "Are you scared?" Sophie asked. "No," I said, and I meant it. Before I left my room for the last time, I wrote a note to myself, folded it, put it in my pocket. It said, "They put me here to rest. I'll make sure they never sleep this easily again." We left at dawn. Sophie had arranged for her car to be brought to the facility. It had been in storage since her children had decided she didn't need to drive anymore. A grey Toyota, 15 years old, perfectly maintained. She'd paid the storage fees from an old account they didn't know about. The morning nurse looked surprised when we came down with our suitcases, but Laurie had already processed the paperwork. We were free to go. "Good luck, Mrs. Lowell," the nurse said. I didn't respond. Luck had nothing to do with this. Sophie drove. I watched the nursing home disappear in the side mirror. 6 months of my life in that building. 6 months of watching, learning, planning. Now, the real work began. The cabin was 2 hours north, up into the mountain region where Maine and New Hampshire blurred together. The roads got narrower. The trees got thicker. The air smelled like pine and clean water. Sophie turned onto a gravel road, marked only by a rusted mailbox. The driveway wound through trees for a quarter mile before opening into a small clearing. The cabin was exactly as she'd described it. 1 story. Wood siding weathered to soft grey. A stone chimney. A porch with 2 rocking chairs. Behind it, nothing but forest and sky. "Welcome home," Sophie said. We carried our suitcases inside. The cabin was cold. It had been months since anyone was here. But everything was intact. 1 main room with a kitchen and living area. 2 small bedrooms. 1 bathroom. A wood stove for heat. Simple. Sufficient. Perfect. "I'll get the heat going," Sophie said. "You want to unpack or explore?" "Both." I chose the smaller bedroom. The window looked east toward the sunrise. I hung my few clothes in the closet, set my toiletries in the bathroom we'd share, placed my folders of documents on the small desk. Then I sat on the bed and let myself feel it. Freedom. Not the false freedom of retirement or the managed freedom of the nursing home. Real freedom. The kind where you make your own choices and live with the consequences. I had $1,900 in my new bank account. Sophie had her pension, $2,200 a month. Together, we had enough. The cabin was paid for. Property taxes were minimal. We could live simply, carefully, and never ask our children for anything again. That evening, we sat on the porch with wine from a bottle Sophie had stored in the cabin cellar. The sun set through the trees, painting everything gold and red. "What now?" Sophie asked. "Now I wait for them to notice." "They will. Daniel's going to lose that loan. Lena's going to lose that pension income." "I know." "You're really going to make them pay." I looked at her. "They stole from me, not just money. They stole my choices, my dignity, my right to decide how I live." Sophie nodded slowly. "Then let's make sure they understand exactly what they lost." The first email came 3 days later. I'd set up alerts on my phone for any changes to my accounts. The notification appeared while I was making coffee. Account access request denied. Daniel Lowell. He'd tried to access my pension account. The same account he'd been draining for 8 months. The same account I'd now secured with a new password, new security questions, and a formal notice that only I was authorized to make transactions. I showed Sophie. "That's strike 1, she said. Strike 2 came the following week. A notification from the mortgage company. Collateral dispute under review. All loan disbursements frozen pending resolution. Daniel's construction company had just lost access to $60,000 in borrowed money. Money he'd probably already spent. Money he now had to account for without being able to use my house as leverage. I didn't smile. Smiling would suggest I was enjoying this. I wasn't enjoying it. I was correcting it. Sophie and I fell into a routine. Mornings, we'd have coffee on the porch and watch the woods wake up. Afternoons, I'd work on my documents while Sophie read or worked in the small garden plot behind the cabin. Evenings, we'd cook together. Simple meals, nothing fancy, the kind of food that tastes better because you made it yourself. I called Cassandra once a week on a prepaid phone. She'd give me updates from the nursing home. Your daughter called yesterday, she told me in mid-April. Asked if you'd had any visitors. What did you say? I said you'd discharged yourself and we couldn't give out information about former residents. How did she sound? Irritated, like she'd expected to find you there. Good. In May, I contacted 3 local newspapers with anonymous tips about the increase in financial exploitation of elderly Americans. Included general statistics. Mentioned that families often use nursing home placement as justification for taking control of assets. Suggested it might be worth investigating. 2 papers published small articles. The third ran a full feature, including interviews with legal advocates and case studies of families who'd been caught stealing from their parents. Lena's name wasn't mentioned, but I sent her a copy anyway, along with an anonymous note. Does this sound familiar? Sophie thought I was being too subtle. They need to know it's you, she said. Not yet. First, they need to understand that their world is falling apart. Then, they need to know why. Through my old nursing contacts, I arranged for a formal medical evaluation. A doctor I'd worked with for 20 years agreed to see me. He performed a full cognitive assessment, memory tests, reasoning tasks, psychological screening. The results were exactly what I expected. Margaret Lowell, age 63, demonstrates full cognitive capacity, no signs of dementia, confusion, or impaired judgment. Patient is articulate, logical, and fully capable of managing her own affairs. He dated the letter 3 months earlier, backdating to just before I'd left Brookside. Put it on official letterhead, signed and sealed, proof that I'd never needed to be in that nursing home. Proof that any financial arrangements made on my behalf were unnecessary. Proof that my children had lied. I added it to my envelope. By June, the envelope was thick. I'd assembled copies of everything. Bank statements showing the unauthorized transfers. The forged power of attorney documents. The loan papers using my house as collateral. The property dispute resolution showing I'd reclaimed ownership. The news articles about elder exploitation. The medical evaluation. And photos. Sophie had taken them on her phone. Pictures of us on the porch, in the garden, smiling, free. The final edition was a handwritten note. I drafted it carefully, revised it twice, read it to Sophie. She listened in silence. When I finished, she said, "That's perfect. That's exactly what they need to hear." I folded it, placed it in the envelope with everything else. Then I drove to Brookside Manor and asked to see Laurie. She looked surprised to see me. "Mrs. Lowell, how are you?" "I'm well. Better than I've been in years, actually." "I'm glad to hear it." She gestured to a chair, but I stayed standing. "I need to give you something," I said. I handed her the sealed envelope. "If my children ever come here asking about me, I want you to give them this." Laurie took the envelope, looked at it, looked at me. "Are you sure?" "Very sure. And if they don't come, they will. Eventually. When they realize they can't reach me any other way." She nodded slowly. "I'll keep it safe." "Thank you, Laurie, for everything." I turned to leave. "Mrs. Lowell," she called after me. I looked back. "I'm glad you got out," she said quietly. "Most people don't." I drove back to the cabin as the sun was setting. Sophie was on the porch, reading in the last light. "It's done?" she asked. "It's done. How do you feel?" I sat in the other rocking chair, looked out at the trees and the sky and the simple, quiet peace of this place. "Free," I said. "Finally, free." Summer in the mountains was everything I'd forgotten the world could be. Sophie and I planted tomatoes and herbs in the small garden. We hiked the trails behind the cabin. We read books and drank coffee and talked about everything except our children. The money was tight but manageable. Between Sophie's pension and my social security, now deposited directly into my secure account, we had enough for groceries, utilities, and the occasional tank of gas. We lived simply, no restaurants, no unnecessary purchases. But we had what we needed, and we had our dignity back. I kept the prepaid phone for essential contacts. Cassandra would text once every few weeks with updates. The nursing home was the same. New residents arrived, old ones left, one way or another. Life continued in that antiseptic building while I lived in the woods. In July, I received an email notification from the county assessor's office. My property taxes had been marked as delinquent. Daniel had stopped paying them, probably assuming I'd never notice or wouldn't be able to do anything about it. I paid them myself from my savings account, included a note requesting all future notices be sent to my new mailing address at the cabin. Added a formal statement that Daniel Lowell no longer had any authority to make decisions regarding my property. Sophie watched me send the payment. That's going to leave you pretty low on funds. I know. Worth it? Every penny. The following week, Cassandra sent a text. Your son came by, looking for you. I told him I didn't know where you were. He threatened to lawyer up. I told him to go ahead. I smiled at that. Cassandra had a spine of steel. Did he leave any information? I texted back. Just a number. Want it? No, I don't need to talk to him. Good. He seemed pretty stressed. I hope so. August brought rain and cooler temperatures. Sophie and I spent more time inside, cooking elaborate meals just because we could. We'd experiment with recipes, laugh at the failures, celebrate the successes. One evening, while we were making soup from the garden vegetables, Sophie said, I haven't talked to my kids in 4 months. Do you miss them? She thought about that. I miss who I thought they were. The kids I raised, not the people who put me away to make their lives easier. Yeah, I said. I know exactly what you mean. Do you think they've changed? Or do you think they were always like this and we just didn't see it? I stirred the soup. I think they got comfortable. Comfortable people stopped seeing other people as people. We became problems to solve instead of parents to respect. And now we're problems they can't solve. Exactly. In September, I contacted a lawyer, not to sue, that would take time and money I didn't have, but to formally revoke any implied consent my children might have claimed regarding my finances. The lawyer was a woman in her 50s who specialized in elder law. She listened to my story without interruption. You have a strong case, she said when I finished. Medical fraud, financial exploitation, possibly identity theft if your son forged documents. I don't want to press charges. I just want to make sure they can never do this again. She nodded. I can file the paperwork. It'll be public record. Anyone who searches your name will see that you formally revoked all previous financial arrangements and declared yourself fully competent to manage your own affairs. How much? $300 for the filing. I'll waive the consultation fee because, frankly, what they did to you makes me angry. I paid her in cash. She filed the documents that afternoon. The leaves turned gold and red. Sophie and I spent October afternoons on the porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the forest transform. The cabin had a wood stove, and we'd stockpiled enough firewood to last through winter. You ever think about what happens next? Sophie asked one day. What do you mean? After the revenge, after they figure out what you've done. What then? I looked out at the trees. Then I keep living, here, on my terms. That's the whole point. And if they try to find you, they won't. They never cared enough to look before. They're not going to start now. But I was wrong about that. In November, Cassandra texted, Your daughter hired an investigator. Professional guy. Came here with questions. I gave him nothing. But he's persistent. I stared at the message. Lena was looking for me, actually spending money to track me down. Did he leave a card? I texted back. Yes. Want the info? No, but let me know if he comes back. Will do. Be careful, Maggie. I showed Sophie the text. What are you going to do? She asked. Nothing. Let them look. They're not going to find this place. Your cabin's in your maiden name, and there's no paper trail connecting us. Still, if they're looking, they're getting desperate. Good. Desperate people make mistakes. Winter came early that year. The first snow fell in late November, turning the forest into something from a postcard. Sophie and I were ready. We had food, firewood, books. The cabin was well insulated. We were comfortable. I thought about my children living their complicated lives in their expensive houses. Thought about Daniel trying to explain to his creditors why his collateral had disappeared. Thought about Lena dealing with the slow drip of questions from her professional contacts about elder care ethics. Thought about them realizing slowly that their mother had outmaneuvered them completely. On Christmas Eve, Sophie and I made dinner together. Nothing fancy. Roast chicken, vegetables from what we'd preserved from the garden, fresh bread Sophie had learned to bake. We ate by candlelight with the wood stove crackling. Merry Christmas, Sophie said, raising her glass of wine. Merry Christmas, I replied. We didn't talk about our children, didn't acknowledge the holidays we'd spent serving their families, cooking their meals, buying their presents. This was our Christmas now, quiet, simple, ours. In January, I sent the last piece of my plan into motion. I contacted the 3 journalists who'd written the elder abuse articles, sent them anonymous tips about specific cases in our region, included enough detail to make them curious, but not enough to identify myself, mentioned that adult children often exploited the nursing home system to gain control of their parents' assets. 2 journalists responded asking for more information. I gave them general guidance, public records to search, questions to ask nursing home administrators. The 3rd journalist published another article in February. This one included specific examples, local examples, families in our county who'd been investigated for financial exploitation of elderly parents. Daniel and Lena's names still weren't mentioned, but the pattern was clear, and I made sure they each received a copy of the article, along with a simple note. Some patterns are impossible to ignore. March arrived with melting snow and mud season. Sophie and I started planning our garden for the spring. Tomatoes again, herbs, maybe some lettuce and carrots. You know, Sophie said one morning, I used to think revenge was beneath me. Dignified people didn't seek revenge. And now I think dignity is knowing your worth and making sure other people know it too. I smiled. I'll drink to that. We were sitting on the porch with coffee when Cassandra's text came through. They're there. Your kids. At the nursing home. Right now. Looking for you. I felt my heart rate pick up. Just slightly. The same feeling I used to get in the ER right before a trauma case came in. Anticipation. Focus. How do they look? I texted back. Desperate. Angry. Scared. Laurie's with them now. Is she giving them the envelope? Not yet. She's letting them ask questions first, making them work for it. I set down the phone. Sophie was watching me. It's happening, I said. You ready? I've been ready for 16 months. We waited. That was the hardest part. Knowing they were there, at Brookside Manor, probably sitting in Laurie's office demanding answers. Knowing that soon they'd have the envelope. Soon they'd read everything. Soon they'd understand. I kept my phone on the table between Sophie and me. We didn't talk, just drank our coffee and waited. An hour later, Cassandra texted, Laurie gave them the envelope. They're reading it in your old room. I could picture it perfectly. That small room where I'd spent 6 months. The single chair, the narrow bed, Daniel and Lena standing there, opening the thick manila envelope, pulling out document after document. The bank statements, the property records, the legal filings, the medical evaluation, the photographs, the note. How long? I texted Cassandra. Still there. I can hear your daughter's voice from here. She's not happy. Sophie leaned over to read the message. I almost feel bad for Laurie, having to deal with them. Laurie can handle herself. We went about our day as normally as possible. I worked on a quilt I'd started. Sophie prepared lunch. We pretended this was like any other day. But it wasn't. This was the day everything changed. The afternoon brought clouds and a cold wind. Spring in the mountains was unpredictable. One day warm and promising, the next day threatening snow. I built up the fire in the wood stove and made tea. My phone buzzed. Another text from Cassandra. They left. Your son looked like someone had punched him. Your daughter was crying. Real crying, not the pretty kind. And that was it. The moment I'd been building toward for 16 months, I set down my teacup. It's done, I told Sophie. How do you feel? I thought about that, searched for satisfaction, for triumph, for any of the feelings I'd expected to have at this moment, but all I felt was tired. I feel like I finally put down something heavy I'd been carrying for too long. Sophie nodded. That's the right feeling, I think. Not happiness, just relief. We spent the evening quietly, made dinner, played cards, went to bed early, but I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about them reading my note, about the exact words I'd written. You said this place would be good for me. I'd have people my age. You were right. One of them taught me how to stay alive long enough to watch you learn manners. Simple, direct, unforgiving. At 2 a.m., my phone rang. I looked at the caller ID. Lena. I didn't answer. It rang again 5 minutes later. Daniel. I turned off the phone. The next morning, I had 17 missed calls. 10 from Lena, 7 from Daniel, and 3 voicemails. I deleted them without listening. Sophie found me on the porch. They called. All night. You going to call back? No. They'll keep trying. Let them. We had breakfast. The sun came out. The day warmed up. Life continued. Over the next week, the calls decreased. 5 a day, then 3, then 1, then silence. They'd gotten the message, or they'd given up. Either way, I'd made my point. In April, I received a formal letter from a law firm, Daniel's lawyer, wanting to discuss property arrangements and family matters. The letter was careful, formal, with no admission of wrongdoing. I sent it back with a note. All property matters have been legally resolved. All family matters ended when you signed me into Brookside Manor. Do not contact me again. Lena tried a different approach. She sent flowers to the nursing home with a card. Mum, please call. We need to talk. Laurie texted me. Flowers arrived for you. Want me to forward them? No. Give them to another resident, someone who doesn't have children. Done. You're ruthless, you know that. I learnt from the best. Sophie and I planted our garden in early May. The earth was still cold, but we worked compost into the soil and built raised beds for better drainage. It felt good to have my hands in dirt, to be building something instead of dismantling something. You think they'll stop trying? Sophie asked as we worked. Eventually, once they realize I'm never going to respond. And if they find this place? I sat back on my heels. Then they find it. I'm not hiding, Sophie. I'm just living somewhere they can't control. There's a difference. All the difference in the world. The tomatoes sprouted in June. The herbs grew thick and fragrant. We harvested lettuce and radishes and felt wealthy in ways that had nothing to do with money. Summer passed into fall again. A full year since I'd left Brookside Manor. A full year of freedom, of choice, of living on my own terms. The lawyer sent one more letter in September, more formal, more threatening, suggesting that my irrational behavior and refusal to communicate indicated I might need professional evaluation. I filed it away, didn't respond. They could threaten all they wanted. I had documentation proving my competence. I had witnesses. I had a life they couldn't touch. Sophie turned 67 in October. We celebrated with cake and wine and a long walk through the autumn woods. "You saved my life," she said, as we sat on a fallen log, watching the sun filter through red and gold leaves. "We saved each other's," I corrected. "Fair enough." She was quiet for a moment. "Do you ever regret it? Any of it?" "Not for a second." "Not even your kids? Don't you miss them at all?" I thought about that carefully. I missed the children I raised, the ones who'd come to me with skinned knees and bad dreams. But those children grew up and became people I don't recognize. So no, I don't miss them. Winter came again. The second winter in our cabin. We were better prepared this time. More firewood, more preserved food, more books, more comfort in our routine. Christmas was quiet. Just the two of us. We didn't exchange gifts. We'd agreed neither of us needed more things. Instead, we gave each other the gift of not being alone. In February, 16 months after I'd left Brookside Manor, Cassandra sent a final text. "Your daughter was here again today. Just sat in the parking lot for an hour. Didn't come inside. Then drove away." I stared at that message for a long time. Sophie read over my shoulder. "She's thinking about you." "Good," I said. "She should." But I felt something then. Not regret, exactly. Not guilt. Just a strange hollowness where motherhood used to live. I'd loved my children once. Loved them with everything I had. Worked myself to exhaustion to give them good lives. Sacrificed my own wants and needs for theirs. And they'd repaid me by putting me away when I became inconvenient. That wasn't something you forgave. That was something you survived. "Come on," Sophie said, pulling me out of my thoughts. "Let's make soup, the good kind with the carrots from last summer." We cooked together, ate together, washed dishes together, lived the life we'd built from the ashes of the ones our children had tried to destroy. And that night, before I went to sleep, I took out the envelope I'd prepared a year ago, the one Laurie had given to my children. I'd made a copy of my final note, the one that had laid out everything they'd done, everything they'd lost, everything they'd never get back. I read it one more time. "You said this place would be good for me. I'd have people my age. You were right. One of them taught me how to stay alive long enough to watch you learn manners. 16 months later, you came back, and you found out. I didn't run. I just walked away with everything that was mine." I folded it carefully, put it back in the drawer where I kept my important papers. Then I turned out the light and slept better than I had in years. 16 months after I walked out of Brookside Manor, Daniel and Lena drove back there together. I know this because Cassandra texted me that morning. They're here. Both of them. First time they've been here together since they dropped you off. I was in the garden, pulling early weeds from between the emerging spring plants. The text made me pause, my hands still in the dirt. "Sophie," I called. She came out from the cabin, coffee mug in hand. "What's wrong?" "They went back." "Both of them?" "Both." She sat on the porch steps. "You knew they would eventually." "I did. I just didn't think it would take this long." 16 months. More than a year of them living with the consequences of their choices. More than a year of frozen accounts, property disputes, reputation damage, and the slow realization that their mother had outplayed them completely. And now they were back where it started. Looking for closure, maybe, or revenge of their own, or just answers. They wouldn't like what they found. I washed my hands with the garden hose and sat next to Sophie. "Tell me the story," she said. "From their perspective, what do they think happened?" I thought about it. Daniel probably thinks I went senile and made bad decisions, that I misunderstood the arrangements, that I need to be found and corrected. And Lena? Lena knows better. She's smart enough to see the pattern, but she's probably convinced herself it's all a misunderstanding, that I'm angry and confused and just need to be talked down. They still don't get it. They will. Today they will. My phone stayed on the table between us, waiting for updates. The morning passed slowly. Every minute felt stretched and strange, like the moment before a verdict. Finally, at 10:47 a.m., Cassandra texted, "They're in Laurie's office. She's explaining that you discharged yourself, that you're not here, that she can't give them any information about where you went. Can you hear them?" I texted back. "Your daughter is crying. Your son is angry. Mostly at Laurie, like any of this is her fault. Give it time. Laurie just told them she has something for them, an envelope you left. Here we go." I stood up, walked to the edge of the porch. The forest stretched out in every direction, green and alive and indifferent to human drama. "They have it now," I said. Sophie stood too, came to stand beside me. "How do you feel?" "Like I'm about to watch a building I spent years constructing finally collapse." "That's specific. That's accurate." We waited. The sun climbed higher. Birds sang. The wind moved through the trees. My phone buzzed. "Cassandra. They asked to see your old room. Laurie's taking them up now. They're carrying the envelope." I could see it so clearly. That narrow hallway, the elevator, the antiseptic smell, the polite, false cheerfulness of the walls and artwork, Daniel and Lena walking behind Laurie, holding an envelope they didn't understand yet, about to enter a room where their mother had lived for 6 months while they forgot about her, about to discover what forgetting costs. "They're in the room," I told Sophie. She squeezed my hand. "It's okay to feel whatever you feel right now." "I don't know what I feel." "That's okay too." We sat back down. I kept my phone in my hand, watching, waiting. The next text took 12 minutes to arrive. I just walked past the room. I could see through the door window. They're reading. Your daughter is sitting on the bed. Your son is standing. Papers everywhere. Are they saying anything? Not that I can hear, but your daughter looks like she's been hit. Good. Maggie. I know. But good. I set down the phone. My hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear or anxiety. From adrenaline. From the simple physical response to knowing that something important was happening somewhere else, and I couldn't control it. "You want to go inside?" Sophie asked. "Have some tea, distract yourself?" "No, I want to feel this." So we sat and felt it, the weight of consequences finally landing exactly where they belonged. 20 minutes later, they're still in there. Laurie came back downstairs. She said they told her they needed privacy. "I think they're fighting." "Good," I texted back. "They should." "This is really something, Maggie. In all my years here, I've never seen anything like this." "Like what?" "A resident who escaped and then destroyed her children from a distance. It's kind of magnificent. It's just fair. Same thing." Sophie made sandwiches for lunch. We ate without talking much. The phone stayed on the table, silent. Then, at 1:23 p.m., they left. I watched from the admin office. Your son walked out first, fast, like he was running. Your daughter followed. She looked back at the building. I think she was crying. "Did they take the envelope?" "Yes. All of it. That's all I needed to know." I turned off my phone. Sophie looked at me. "It's done." "It's done." "How do you feel now?" I thought about my children, about Daniel's construction company, probably struggling under debt and bad reputation, about Lena's perfect image, probably cracked beyond repair, about how they'd tried to erase me and instead erased themselves, about how I'd spent 16 months methodically, legally, completely dismantling everything they'd built on my stolen foundation. "I feel," I said slowly, "like I can breathe fully for the first time since they put me in that place." Sophie raised her water glass. To breathing, I repeated. We spent the afternoon in the garden, planting seeds, pulling weeds, doing the simple, honest work of making things grow. As the sun set, Sophie said, "You know they might still try to contact you." "They might." "You'll ignore them? Unless they're ready to apologize. Truly apologize. Acknowledge what they did. And even then..." I trailed off. "Even then what?" Even then, I'm not sure I could look at them without seeing that nursing home room, that narrow bed, that single chair, that view of a parking lot instead of a forest. Some things can't be forgiven. Some things shouldn't be. That night I slept deeply and without dreams. I woke to sunlight through my window and the smell of Sophie's coffee already brewing. A new day. Another day that was completely mine. I'd won. Not because I'd destroyed them, though I'd certainly damaged them. I'd won because I'd taken back my life, my choices, my dignity. I'd won because I was free. And they were the ones trapped now, trapped in the consequences of their cruelty. Trapped in the knowledge that their mother had been smarter, stronger, and more ruthless than they'd ever imagined. Trapped in the understanding that some betrayals cost everything. I made my coffee, joined Sophie on the porch, watched the forest wake up. "Think they learned their lesson?" Sophie asked. "I don't know, but I learned mine." "What's that?" "That the only person who gets to decide my worth is me." She smiled. "Damn right." We sat in comfortable silence. Two women who'd escaped. Two women who'd survived. Two women who'd won. The morning was cold and clear and perfect. And somewhere, in some city with too much noise and not enough truth, my children were reading my words over and over. Learning, finally, what it cost to underestimate the woman who raised them. The envelope that Laurie handed Daniel and Lena was thick, manila, sealed with packing tape, my handwriting on the front in black marker, for my children. "When you come looking." Daniel had taken it from Laurie's hands like it might explode. I didn't see this happen, of course, but Cassandra described it to me later, in small texts throughout that day, and I could imagine the rest. They probably stood in Laurie's office. Daniel aggressive, demanding answers. Lena tearful, performing distress. Laurie calm, professional, giving them nothing. "Your mother isn't here. She discharged herself 16 months ago." "Where did she go?" "I can't share that information." "We're her children. And she's a competent adult who chose to leave. I have no obligation to tell you anything." That's when Laurie would have mentioned the envelope. The thing I'd left behind like a time bomb with a very specific timer. "She left this for you. She said to give it to you if you came back looking for her." Daniel would have wanted to open it right there, but Lena would have wanted privacy, somewhere they could control the situation. So they'd asked to see my old room. The room was empty now. Cassandra had told me it had been cleaned and reassigned within a week of my departure. Some other forgotten parent living in the space where I'd spent 6 months planning my escape, but Laurie had agreed to let them use it. Professional courtesy. Or maybe she knew what was coming and wanted them to feel the full weight of it in that specific space. They'd climbed those stairs, walked that hallway, entered that room, and opened the envelope. I picture Daniel pulling out the contents, papers spilling across the narrow bed, documents in neat stacks, each one labeled with a sticky note in my handwriting. Bank statements, unauthorized transfers, property documents, fraudulent collateral medical evaluation, proof of competence, legal filings, revocation of all permissions, news articles, elder financial abuse photographs. The note. Lena would have picked up the bank statements first. She'd always been the one who managed appearances, who kept track of details. She would have scanned the numbers, seen her name on the transfer authorizations, seen her routing number, receiving hundreds of dollars monthly. "Daniel," she would have said, "did you know about this?" But Daniel wasn't looking at the bank statements. He was looking at the property documents, the mortgage papers showing my house as collateral, the dispute resolution showing the collateral removed, the legal filing establishing that he'd never had permission to use my property for his business debts. She knew, he would have said, she knew everything. They would have gone through it all then, piece by piece, each document a small detonation, each revelation a crack in whatever story they'd been telling themselves about why their finances had fallen apart over the past 16 months. The medical evaluation would have hit Lena hard. Dr. Patterson's neat signature. The date, March 15th, just before I left Brookside. The summary stating clearly that I was of sound mind, fully competent, capable of managing all my own affairs. Proof that I'd never needed to be in that nursing home. Proof that every arrangement they'd made for my own good had been a lie. Then the news articles. 3 of them, each one discussing financial exploitation of elderly Americans. Each one describing patterns that matched exactly what they'd done to me. Each one delivered to them anonymously over the past year. They'd know then. Know that I'd sent those articles. Know that I'd been watching their realization dawn slowly. Know that every piece of bad luck they'd experienced lately hadn't been luck at all. And finally, the photographs. Sophie had printed them in color. Full-page size. Me and her on the cabin porch, smiling. In the garden, dirty hands holding fresh vegetables. On a trail in the woods, surrounded by trees and freedom. Proof that I was alive. Happy. Free. Thriving without them. Proof that I hadn't needed saving. I'd needed escape, but it was the handwritten note that would destroy them. I'd written it on a single piece of paper, folded it carefully, placed it at the bottom of the envelope so they'd find it last. After all the evidence, after all the documentation, after all the photographs, after they understood exactly what I'd done, Lena would have opened it. She had better handwriting analysis skills. She'd have recognized my handwriting immediately. The same script that had signed their report cards, their permission slips, their birthday cards for 38 years. She'd have read it loud, probably, her voice shaking. You said this place would be good for me. I'd have people my age. You were right. One of them taught me how to stay alive long enough to watch you learn manners. Daniel would have grabbed it from her hands, read it himself, disbelieving. But there was more. 16 months ago, you put me here because I was inconvenient, because managing my life was harder than warehousing me, because you could take what was mine and call it caretaking. You sold my car, mortgaged my house, stole my pension, and you did it all while telling yourselves you were being good children. I didn't fight you then because fighting would have proven your point, that I was difficult, unreasonable, unmanageable. Instead, I watched, I documented, I memorized every pattern, every transaction, every lie. And then I left, not as an escape, as a correction. The frozen accounts, that was me. The property disputes, me. The professional reputation damage, also me. The anonymous articles, the legal filings, the medical evaluations, all me. Everything you've lost in the past 16 months, the money, the credibility, the certainty, that's what you took from me in a single afternoon when you signed those papers and drove away. The difference is, what I took back was always mine. What you took was never yours to take. You said I'd have people my age here. You were right. I met Sophie. She taught me that dignity isn't something people give you. It's something you take back when someone tries to steal it. We left together. We lived together. We're free together. And you came back here looking for me 16 months too late. There was one final paragraph. The ending I'd crafted carefully. The last words they'd ever hear from their mother. 16 months later, you came back, and you found out. I didn't run, I just walked away with everything that was mine. Don't look for me, don't call, don't write. You wanted me to disappear into this place. You got your wish. I disappeared into a life you can't control, a life you can't access, a life that's mine. Consider this my last act of motherhood, teaching you that actions have consequences. Goodbye. And at the bottom, my signature, Margaret Lowell, not mom, not mother, my full legal name. The name they'd forged on documents, the name they'd used to steal from me, the name I'd taken back. Cassandra had texted me later about what she'd heard, the silence from that room, the absence of voices, just 2 adults sitting in the reality of what they'd done. what their mother had done in response, how completely they'd underestimated the woman who'd raised them. They sat in that room for an hour. Cassandra told me later that she'd walked past several times, saw them through the small window in the door, just sitting, papers spread across the bed, the photographs lying face up, Daniel with his head in his hands, Lena staring at the wall, neither of them moving, neither of them speaking, just processing. "I've never seen anything like it," Cassandra told me in a phone call that evening. I'd finally turned my phone back on. They looked hollow, like someone had scooped out their insides. "Good," I said. "You don't mean that." But I did. I meant it completely. They'd made me feel hollow for 6 months, every day in that nursing home, waking up in a room that wasn't mine, living a life I hadn't chosen, watching my resources drain away while they pretended it was for my own good. Hollowness was exactly what they deserved to feel. According to Cassandra, Lena was the first to speak, about 40 minutes into their silence. "We have to find her." Daniel had looked up. "And say what?" "I don't know. Apologize, explain." "Explain what, Lena? That we thought we were helping? You think she's going to believe that after this?" He gestured at the papers. "We were helping. She was alone. She was struggling." "Was she?" Daniel's voice had been harsh. "Or were we telling ourselves that because it was easier than actually visiting her? Easier than calling her every week? Easier than being her kids?" Lena had started crying then. Real crying, not the pretty kind she used for professional sympathy. "She destroyed us," she'd said. "Our reputations. Your business. My clients have been asking questions. People think we're abusers." "We are," Daniel had said quietly. "That's what this is showing us. We are." That moment, according to Cassandra, was when they both broke. Daniel had picked up the medical evaluation, read it again, focused on the date. "She planned this," he'd said. "Before she left, she got this evaluation, set up the documentation. She knew exactly what she was doing. She's 63, not senile. We treated her like she was. We treated her like property." Lena had picked up one of the photographs, the one of me and Sophie on the porch, both of us smiling at the camera. "She looks happy," Lena had whispered. "She is happy," Daniel had said, "because she's not here, because she's not with us." And that was the truth they couldn't escape. I was happier without them than I'd ever been with them. Happier in a small cabin with a friend than I'd been in their lives for the past 5 years. Happier free than I'd been as their mother. They'd gathered the papers eventually, put them back in the envelope. Lena had tried to keep one of the photographs, but Daniel had stopped her. "It's not ours," he'd said. "None of this is ours anymore." They'd left the room, gone downstairs. Laurie had been waiting in her office. "Did you know?" Lena had asked her. "Did you know what she was planning?" "I knew she was a competent woman who'd been placed here against her better judgment," Laurie had said. "I knew she deserved better than what she got." "Did you help her?" "I followed the law. She had the right to discharge herself. She had the right to leave materials for future visitors. Everything was legal." "But did you help her?" Laurie had looked at them both, held their eyes, and said something that Cassandra heard through the door. "I hope I did." They'd left then, Daniel first, moving fast, Lena following, clutching the envelope. Cassandra had watched from the window as they sat in Daniel's truck in the parking lot, not moving, just talking, arguing maybe, or trying to process what they'd learned. After 20 minutes, Lena had gotten out, stood by her own car, looked back at the building one more time. And that's when Cassandra sent me the text. "Your daughter just stood in the parking lot for 5 full minutes, staring at the building. I think she's trying to understand what happened." "She won't," I'd texted back. "Understanding requires empathy. She doesn't have that for me. Maybe she does now." Too late for it to matter. They'd driven away separately. Daniel first, his truck kicking up gravel. Lena 5 minutes later, slower, like she was driving away from a funeral. In a way, she was. The funeral of the relationship she'd assumed would always be there. The mother who'd always forgive. The parent who'd always be available for use. That version of me was gone, and they ended it when they signed those papers. That evening, my phone rang. Daniel's number. I let it ring. Then Lena's number. I let it ring. They called 4 more times that night, left voicemails I didn't listen to. The next morning, texts started arriving. From Daniel, "Mom, we need to talk, please." From Lena, "I'm so sorry, please call me, please." From Daniel, "I didn't understand. I thought I was helping." From Lena, "Can we meet? Just to talk. I'll drive anywhere." From Daniel, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." I read them all. Felt nothing. Sophie found me on the porch at dawn, phone in hand. "They're trying to reach you." "I know." "You going to respond?" "No." "Not even to tell them to stop?" Silence is an answer. They need to learn to hear it. Over the next week, the messages continued. Desperate, apologetic, pleading. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Like the words were a spell that could undo what they'd done. On day 8, I finally sent one text. To both of them. "You put me in a nursing home to solve a problem. I solved it differently. This is my solution. Don't contact me again." Daniel responded immediately. "Please, just let us explain." I blocked his number. Lena sent a longer message. "Mum, I understand you're angry. You have every right to be, but I'm your daughter. Doesn't that count for something?" I replied once more. "You counted on that. You counted on me forgiving you because I'm your mother. You counted on unconditional love to excuse inexcusable behavior. You were wrong. Family isn't unconditional. It's a privilege you've lost." Then I blocked her number too. Sophie made dinner that night. We ate on the porch as the sun set. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Free," I said. "Finally, completely free." "No regrets?" I thought about that, about the children I'd raised, the diapers I'd changed, the fevers I'd nursed, the homework I'd helped with, the graduations I'd attended, the years I'd given them, about how they'd repaid all of it by putting me away. "No regrets," I said. "They made their choice. I made mine. And if they keep trying, they won't. They got the message." I was right. After that second text, they stopped. No more calls, no more messages, no more attempts. They'd learned what I'd needed to teach them, that I wasn't theirs to control, that my love wasn't unconditional, that some betrayals cost everything. They'd found out 16 months later exactly what their mother was capable of, and it had broken them in all the ways they'd tried to break me. Except I'd done it legally, quietly, efficiently. That night, I slept deeper than ever before.